In this episode of Cycling Tours, I will explore the cycling network within the western sector of Tampines. Hello, it's Transit Evolution here, and welcome to the episode featuring the cycling network in Tampines West. I'll be starting and ending this video at one of the exits to the downtown line station of Tampines. In the process, we'll make wide swirling loops around the network here, which will get you a complete look at the cycling network in western Tampines as it sits in the year 2024. Pardon me as I start with this suspiciously narrow shared path along Tampines Central 2, a path with a width of 2 meters instead of the typical 2.5 meters used by paths of this type. The regional centre does feature many shared paths of such sizes, which will make for a squeezy ride as I endeavour to leave Tampines Regional Centre. I'll first speed up to a town council bicycle path that is one of the first pieces of cycling infrastructure in Tampines, as part of an initial 2.3km project involving 2 paths. This is the Western Path, which links the Centre of Neighbourhood 8 with the Regional Centre. We are off to a questionable start, as I find myself having to dismount and push over a step as I cross car park roads. This is not the correct way of using this bicycle path. It didn't dawn on me at the time, but you're supposed to cycle through the car park road to my left. For that reason, this route is no longer designated a cycling path, but I suppose you can kinda tell an attempt at establishing a cycling route through the precinct of Tampines ParkView. The good thing is that from here on, it will be a mostly smooth journey. The bicycle path makes a way through Tampines Central Park, which itself is also a very useful walking route, providing car-free access between much of Neighbourhood 8 with our Tampines hub. This park is known for fruit-themed playgrounds in the shape of mangosteen and watermelon slices. But we're not here for playgrounds, we are here for cycling. The cycling route will continue along a pedestrian axis through the precinct centres of the Tampines Ville and Tampines PalmWalk, both of which were built in 1985. While the blue-covered linkways and pergolas around me weren't always here, this path I'm travelling on was, although it wasn't originally meant for cycling. It leads through this diamond-shaped space known as a precinct centre, the focal point for the precinct. Continuing through another precinct, Tampines PalmWalk, this connector continues to experience a strong enclosure, with clear spatial definition and strong edges to this so-called pedestrianised street, giving a sense of territoriality and place. These 2 blocks in particular are best suited for this purpose by providing a sense of human scale. Beyond that, a strong sense of arrival as I approach the neighbourhood centre of Neighbourhood 8, rebranded informally as Shop T West of late. But for now, let's move on to Tampines Street 81. This street is a silver zone which was completed in 2020, and you can tell it by the roadside shrubs discouraging crossings except at designated points, with pinch points and islands at regular intervals. Since then, neighbouring Tampines Street 82, 83, and Avenue 3 were also identified to be turned into silver zones. Meanwhile, this path is supposed to serve as a shared path to be built in 2024, but for some reason, it has not been painted yet. I do find myself regularly stopping for vehicles turning in and out of this street, which is inevitable given how the road traffic rules here currently work, and it will admittedly break the momentum of my ride. However, the biggest interruption still lies ahead, as work is in progress for a drop-off porch right at the rear of the neighbourhood centre. I like how this path is situated right next to neighbourhood shops in the adjacent 824 Tampines Street 81, with a little plaza area where people can rest in a roadside food court. Up ahead though, I pass Golden Pines, a tiny block completed in 2001, containing studio apartments to provide cozy comfort for the elderly to enjoy their golden years. These flat types will be the predecessor to the 2-room flexi which are built nowadays. Next up, I'm moving on to Tampines Street 83, skirting the west side of the PalmWalk and Ville precinct. All you can see is a footpath. Perhaps sometime in 2015, the town council attempted to provide a cycling path here, and it is too narrow for its desired purpose since it cannot accommodate 2 bicycles abreast. It gets even narrower as Junyuan Secondary passes me by on the opposite side, to the point where it might not even be able to fit 1 bicycle. When you compare this to the path in its immediate east, I'm sure the other one will provide a much better user experience, especially since this one doesn't lead anywhere useful. Neighbourhood 7 features housing blocks with much more irregular shapes, as it is much newer. The precinct to my left, Tampines ParkView, was only built in 1995, nearly a decade and a half into the new town's development at that point. It flanks an unusually wide shared path which doesn't quite lead anywhere, thanks to the network's currently incomplete state. Unfortunately, there are no plans for any cycling connectivity within that estate through Streets 71 and 72 at the moment, and all the paths will run along the neighborhood's periphery. Such gaps in the network are not immediately obvious for regular cyclists, but for PMD users they are clear. That's thanks to the way the rules are laid out, with a blanket ban on their use on roads and footpaths. I'm now along Tampines Walk, a dead-end street for motorists, designed in a way to not hamper the movement of people. A shared path runs along the west side of this 4-lane cul-de-sac, and a cycling path to its east, which we'll look at later on in the video. But as you can see, where the roadway ends to enable a car-free walking route between our Tampines Hub and Tampines Central Park, the shared path continues. Such designs promote filtered permeability, which encourages walking and cycling as modes of travel within this town. The shared path continues along the 2-lane Tampines Street 82, which has yet to have its silver zone treatment along the periphery of the park. Unfortunately, it would lead to a footpath for quite a lengthy stretch. Oh boy, not again. As I pass St. Hilda's primary and secondary schools, we have some of the narrowest bike paths yet. I sure hope this doesn't count to the 1,300 km target by 2030. The junction between Tampines Avenue 3 and Street 82 is uncontrolled, giving a glimpse of the difficult task that used to be on hand in a typical Singaporean junction to cross the street as a pedestrian, having to look out for vehicles from all directions. Because of the way the paths are laid out, there's also no easy way to cross Tampines Avenue 3, so I will have to briefly use the footpath to connect to the cycling path on the other side. Next up, my journey continues along Tampines Street 91, a crescent-shaped street starting and ending at Tampines Avenue 4. This is likely the smallest neighbourhood in this town at the moment and lacks a neighbourhood centre. That's until new developments to the south are completed in the coming years. We'll look at that later. The cycling path passes by Tampines PalmView and Tampines Palm Spring, avoiding Jin Yuan Primary School as I loop around it. The pavement quality of the cycling path is alright if you disregard the interruptions that I experience every time I cross a driveway. But because it doesn't lead anywhere, I doubt it will be used much. If an attempt is made to make clear a non-roadside link between Tampines Street 91 and Avenue 5, that would be great by enhancing the connectivity of the network and making it possible for bikes to travel along more direct routes than cars. Now, up until now, we have been exploring quite a few scrappy patches of the cycling network here, with some of it dating back to the early days. We shall now inspect the main structure of the network, forming the main path built under Phase 1 of the Tampines Walking and Cycling Town initiative, along Tampines Avenue 1, 4, 5, and 8. Pardon this deviation as I bypass the construction site of a pedestrian overhead bridge. Anyways, this 4km loop around Tampines West was built under contract PL203, awarded in 2018, and completed back at the end of 2021, bringing the network here to a length of 25 km back then. For context, it has increased to 27 km as of 2024 and will reach 30 km in 2026. A large chunk of the network completed in 2021 consists of this 1.2 km stretch of Tampines Avenue 1, connecting Temasek Polytechnic and the center of Tampines Neighbourhood 8 with Tampines West MRT station. It got its peak hour bus lanes and a cycling path on one side in July of that year. This resulted in this arterial road being designated as Singapore's second transit priority corridor, which I made a video about 2 years ago. Let's just say that nothing much has changed since then. However, the journey along this cycling path is pretty rapid. This is thanks to the lack of signalized crossings and relatively few access routes, connecting to pristine driveways which I have to cross along the way. However, since the roadway forms the southern edge of Tampines New Town, it's mainly residents living along the southern edge of Neighbourhood 8 who will benefit from this connection. But it could be a more useful route in the future, as intra-town networks merge into an inter-town island-wide one over time. Approaching the intersection with Tampines Avenue 8, I would like to note the presence of a totem featuring a map of the cycling network as part of a Tampines Walking and Cycling Town initiative, similar to the one in Ang Mo Kio. I will then make an effortless right turn into Tampines Avenue 8, and that's the thing I like about cycling paths in Singapore. You sometimes get to bypass traffic lights which hold motorists back. However, you also encounter obstacles along the way at times, like the bush I smacked into earlier. The path encounters a bit more interruptions as I pass Springfield Secondary School and narrows to a shared path. Because this road doesn't have cycling paths on both sides of the road though, it does mean that residents living in Tampines Green Forest, Green Bloom, Green Fora and Green Lace to my left all have to make road crossings to access cycling infrastructure, which is a bit of a shame. As I travel northwards through the Tampines Street network, you may notice some parallels between it and Ang Mo Kio, the other walking and cycling town of Singapore. For example, they use a similar street and block numbering system, which even extends to the avenues. East-west ones use ascending odd numbers from the south to the north, while north-south ones use ascending even numbers from the east to the west. Once again, this facilitates wayfinding in a sprawling town with a gridiron street layout. But if there's one different thing, it is the topography. While the topography of Ang Mo Kio is preserved, leading to it being pretty hilly, in Tampines, the topography is entirely artificial. Under phases 6 and 7 of the East Coast Reclamation Scheme, 45 million cubic meters of earth was excavated from the former hills of Tampines to reclaim land for Marina East and Marina South. This was done in a mechanized manner to minimize dust and noise pollution and traffic jams for the residents living here then. A 7-kilometer long conveyor belt transports the earth to a jetty in Ville, where hopper barges transport the earth 12 kilometers away to the reclamation site where the earth was discharged. With its hills cut, Tampines was transformed into a rather flat town, which also had the added side effect of making it a very conducive town for cycling without motor power. I would also like to note that it took about 9 minutes to get from Tampines West Station to the northwestern corner of Neighbourhood 8. A similar journey by bus on services 69 or 118 would involve a lengthy walk due to the suboptimal positioning of bus stops at Tampines West MRT station that makes a bus-train transfer quite a pain. Passing Tampines Green Lace to my left and Greenwood to my right, I turn into Tampines Avenue 5, where I pass another map board for wayfinding. Along the way, we'll encounter a couple of community facilities, such as the Tampines Central Community Complex. I'd say this cycling path along Avenue 5 will be used more than the one along Avenue 1, because it cuts right through the heart of Tampines and directly funnels cyclists into the MRT station. However, there are admittedly more stops and goes, which I have to deal with along the way. Passing Tampines ParkView once again, I approach this informal crossing across Tampines Walk, a dead-end street in the way of a trunk cycling route. This probably should have been a raised zebra crossing if we are serious about prioritizing walking and cycling over driving. Pardon this hoarding that's in the way, as I pass the freshly completed Tampines Green Spring Precinct, built on land which used to be a swimming complex. It wraps around Masjid Darul Ghufran, the only mosque in Tampines, the only stand-alone development remaining in a place which once saw a swimming complex, a sports complex, an indoor training hall, playfields, and open spaces. But times have changed. In 2017, our Tampines Hub, Singapore's first integrated lifestyle hub, opened as part of a new development replacing a stadium, sports hall, swimming complex, HDB branch office, and Tampines Regional Library, bringing them under one roof. It also features a gym, playground, rock climbing facilities, community club, a community plaza, and a mall. This is an emerging building typology in Singapore, which aims to result in more efficient land use in the midst of renewing town centres. Unlike private mixed-use shopping malls, they are a result of interagency collaboration within the government. There's therefore a focus on designing good public spaces with synergistic programming, therefore better prioritizing the needs of the community instead of commercial interests. Good design and provision of public spaces was something which was lost in translation when private shopping centers took over the role of town and neighborhood centers. So I say it's good that we return to the fundamentals. I have some opinions on the cycling paths wrapping around our Tampines hub, which I will discuss later. But in the meantime, I shall continue further south along Tampines Avenue 5. This is an example of a roadway which will eventually see bi-directional cycling paths on both sides of the road, and that's desirable in the case of our new towns, which are bisected by big multi-lane avenues which are very difficult to cross. The alternative, which is unidirectional bike lanes, would add significant distances to the journeys of intra-town bike commuters. It's worth noting though that in the process of building our Tampines hub, a stretch of Tampines Avenue 5 was widened from 4 lanes to 6. More recently, the intersection between Tampines Avenues 1, 2, and 5 were widened, which does not in any way help make our roadways easier to cross. The desire to improve traffic flow therefore results in an ever-pressing need for cycling infrastructure on both sides of the roadway so that the needs of cyclists are properly accommodated. I shall now travel on a sketchy bicycle path, which serves as a stretch of the Tampines Park Connector, which we did not cover in the video for the eastern sector of Tampines. I'm not sure why the paths are segregated like this and come in such an unfamiliar design for the Park Connector network, but I guess this is due to some obscure relic of history. As I continue to travel adjacent to Tampines Palm Spring, the bicycle path mysteriously widens into a shared path nearer to Tampines West MRT station, where I want to remind you that this 8-lane stretch of Tampines Avenue 1 with a fairly sketchy park connector is also considered a part of the so-called Transit Priority Corridor. I shall continue my journey along what remains of the park connector as I travel on the west side of Bedok Reservoir Road. This used to be a hilly and secluded area, with the only roadway you drive through to get between Tampines and Bedok New Towns. But today, it has also turned into a construction site, housing the extension of Tampines Neighbourhood 9 with 5 precincts thus far: Green Gem and Green Jade to my right, and Green Quartz, Green Emerald and Green Opal to my left. I won't be travelling along this diverted park connector for long though, as I approach a signalised crossing, where my journey along this park connector ends. You can continue the journey using the cycling tours video for the eastern sector of Ville. I shall now travel along Tampines Street 96. Nothing is interesting to note here other than the presence of a cycling path running next to the Green Jade and Green Gem precincts. Approaching Tampines Avenue 1, the cycling path ends, though it seems like work is in progress to widen the pavement to connect the cycling path segment along Street 96 with the junction above Tampines West MRT station. I shall now return to Tampines Avenue 4, which is the path forming that 4-kilometer loop opened in 2021. The shared path gets diverted as it wraps around one of the exits for Tampines West MRT station of the downtown line, in a small little plaza next to the precinct of Tampines ParkView. Today though, there is a pasar malam in the way. But this is not a problem, as there's ample clear width for me to ride on through the temporary fair at a low speed without having to dismount and push. At the intersection with Tampines Street 91, the cycling path switches to the other side of Tampines Avenue 4. This sure is a little annoying, adding an unnecessary crossing to the cycling route for those heading to the regional center of Tampines. I'm going to make a little bit of a U-turn here at the intersection with Tampines Avenue 5 and show you the rest of the cycling path along our Tampines hub. For whatever reason, it was decided that this is where the cycling path is supposed to run, with brick tiles and two red lines running at the boundary of the development itself. Moreover, the pathway is pretty cramped and crosses many driveways at pretty odd angles, making for a pretty uncomfortable and precarious ride. Some stretches even have a cycling icon, which suggests that it's supposed to be a dedicated cycling path as well. That is visually unobvious, of course. The path then makes an abrupt turn into Tampines Street 82. At this particular driveway, I have to cross back to a red cycling path at a really weird angle. Meanwhile, it's worth noting that work is in progress to build a cycling path along the northern side of our Tampines hub. We'll see what that looks like in 2026. But for now, I continue my journey along the other side of Tampines Walk, next to Tampines Green Spring. Next up, we have Tampines Avenue 6. This forms the western edge of what was meant to be the hourglass-shaped Tampines Regional Centre, which unfortunately did not fully materialize. For context, Tampines Regional Centre is the regional centre serving the east of Singapore, together with Seletar in the northeast, Woodlands in the north, and Jurong East in the west. It was also the one which got built the quickest back in the 1990s. The southern part opposite our Tampines hub features a finance park and a telepark, to serve as the financial and business center of the east, wrapping around the bus interchange and MRT station. The northern half was originally earmarked as a cultural hub, with hotels and civic buildings lined symmetrically along a pedestrianized axis, located where Tampines Concourse is today. But that did not happen. Instead, we got a sea of mono-use residential housing, such as Tampines Greenleaf to my right. For this final leg of my cycling journey, I will make a swoop around the extremities of Tampines West, along the Tampines Avenue 9 and 10 park connectors before returning to the regional centre using Tampines Avenue 3. I'm now travelling along the Tampines Avenue 9 park connector next to Tampines Green Ranges, launched in November 2014 as the first public housing precinct of Neighbourhood 6, more commonly known as Tampines North. This is a housing district that will be further developed throughout the 2020s, and we'll have a better look at its current state in 2024 under the video for the northern sector of Tampines. I'm now travelling along the Tampines Avenue 10 park connector. It follows a humongous major arterial road bisecting the residential and industrial areas of Tampines. Once upon a time, it was even destined to be a semi-expressway. Even on this cloudy day where lackluster shade is less of a problem, a cycling journey along this 8-lane road is pretty unpleasant, and a far cry from the good sensory experiences that were originally imagined under the Park Connector Network program. However, a wide path is a wide path, and this Park Connector does its job of being a part of the Eastern Corridor, which aims to provide recreational connectivity from Pasir Ris Park to the East Coast Park. One should not expect a lively streetscape anywhere in this vicinity. 5 condominiums line the roadway. From north to south, Park Central Residences, the Alps Residences, the Tapestry, the Santorini, and Q Bay Residences. Unlike public housing, private housing in the form of condominiums tend to suck the life out of the roads and streets they front, as the fences surrounding them lead to inactive streetscapes. This makes the journey here even more boring, for there is nothing interesting to see. Urban design considerations take a back seat as traffic flow is prioritized, with huge turning radii and the need for traffic islands, for slip roads leading into and out of local access roads, like Tampines Street 85. Finally, I'm turning back onto Tampines Avenue 1. This stretch of the pavement is made of a mere footpath, and it forms the part of the route which is not a transit priority corridor, but it will eventually see a cycling path come 2026. We can see that the entry point into Tampines Street 86 is even more car-centric than Street 85. There's not even a painted zebra crossing here. The last major cycling path which we've yet to cover is along Tampines Avenue 3. Work is currently ongoing to repaint a stretch of it from the older grey design to the current red, so pardon the blank slate you see here. Together with Avenue 5, Avenue 3 is amongst the first ones in the vicinity to see a cycling path back in 2013. One of the main changes being made to the pavement in the process is the realignment of the pavement near road crossings, with an offset further from the original roadway so that pedestrians and cyclists are positioned in a manner that's easier for drivers to see. A new raised zebra crossing has also been added where an informal crossing used to be. Of course, the offset also makes room for vehicular queues between the zebra crossing and the junction, so that turning vehicles aren't in the way of those going straight. I would have liked the offset to be smaller though, as it requires pedestrians to walk a significantly longer distance along their neighborhood streets. We can see a bit of the old cycling path as we pass the neighborhood center again, and it is haphazardly aligned over here. The footpath is a thin strip of pavement next to a roadway on my left, too close for comfort with the carriageway, so nobody would walk there. Fortunately, the area to my right is not grass but a paved plaza, so there's ample room for people to walk about. Oh, it just turned into a shared path. Well, I suppose this path is more convenient for more residents, but it's not as smooth as a ride when compared to Tampines Avenue 1 further south, as I come to a stop at another intersection with Tampines Street 81. I want to point out a little issue here as I approach the intersection with Tampines Avenue 4. To improve traffic flow for right-turning vehicles, one leg of the pedestrian crossings at this intersection was removed. It would also be the most direct possible crossing from the cycling path along Avenue 3 to the one along Avenue 4. Instead, I have to make this two-pronged crossing, which means I need to wait at this intersection 2 times. These little delays can add up and lengthen a cycling commute, so I hope that the missing crossing can be installed here. At this point, I'm just heading back to the town centre. My overall impression of Tampines West is that the network here is currently more developed than the East, especially along Tampines Avenue 1 and 5. The journey is pretty intuitive and smooth, well if you disregard those tiny town council paths and the ones wrapping our Tampines hub. I do want to note though that because of the way the cycling paths are designed here, with narrow painted lanes instead of physical separation, you will frequently encounter pedestrians either walking on them or accidentally deviating into them. This is not a user problem, but an infrastructural problem. I hope to see more examples of split cycling paths in future projects, like those we see in Ang Mo Kio, which will make this less of a problem. For this final stretch along Tampines Central 1, we encounter a shared path with a width of 2 meters, 50 cm narrower than what should have been built here. Unfortunately, due to the way the entrances to the buildings of the finance park are aligned to the road crossings, everyone has to walk on the shared path for some distances, which makes cycling here a little finicky. As I approach Tampines MRT station, I come to the end of this episode of Cycling Tours. Do leave your thoughts on how you find cycling in Tampines. Do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you have not done so. Also, if you are willing, you may support me using the Super Thanks function of YouTube. Till we meet again, this is Transit Evolution signing off.